kept secrets travel.
Exactly, and that comes straight into our next point, which is talking about budget. Because in our first episode, we talk about planning, and one of the main things about planning is, you know, if you're going up to the Alps and your main goal for the whole trip is you're climbing, let's say Mont Blanc, and you're going through these refuges, you know that a beer is going to cost you probably 8 to 12 euros just for a can of beer. That should already be budgeted for, and you should already mentally take that as a note within your planning stage. Whereas if you're going,
assuming that beer is 100% what you're trying to have.
yeah, but you know, if someone's mountain, you come down and you think, oh, let's celebrate, let's have a beer. Maybe you don't drink and you want a water, apple juice or whatever. But that's all. That should realistically be in your budget. Whereas if you're going to these different locations, if you're traveling around Southeast Asia, if you're going to Australia, if you're going to South America, anywhere around Europe, you'll have a lot of variety, you'll have different choices, different shops will have different budgets already around. And food and drink is generally something which is quite hard to haggle with anyway.
Yeah.
Whereas as soon as you start looking at clothing, local stands then become a bigger player in the haggling world, because they really want you to buy it off them, whereas and they're often the people running the shop and in there are also the owner of the shop, whereas if you go to some of the brands, won't name drop too many, but if you know, we're in Cusco, there's a Helly Hansen, North Face and all that stuff, because they know there's hikers around there, and those people in the shop have very limiting power in terms of what discount they can give you. Their job doesn't completely, and their sort of livelihood doesn't depend on you buying that one jacket that day.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas us going and buying the jumper really benefits on the local community.
Yeah. So if you were maybe going for an item like this, what would your budget that you'd be going in with be?
So these 3 items I bought all at the same time.
Okay, so they're a bundle. Were they sold separately, or did you try and barter them together?
They were being sold as individual items, and I wanted to buy something to take home.
Yes.
I didn't know this is what I was going to buy. That's a very different thing, is going into a shop just to see what they have, and then once you're in there, I then decided, I really like this item, really like this item, really like this one. And the benefit of buying multiple is all of a sudden your haggling power jumps up, because they know that overall they have a chance of making a bigger profit, but you overall have more power in trying to crunch the numbers.
And is this very common in Madagascar? Is this like lots of people selling these? Lots of people selling these. So could you move between different people when bartering or not?
Yeah, exactly. So these are handmade products. There are a lot of stands doing them. Generally, if I'm going for something like this and I know a shop sells it and I know a guy on the street sells it, I'll try and go to the guy on the street, as long as, you know, everything seems fine. Some countries, even as a tourist, you can get in trouble if you're buying for someone on the street and they're not legally allowed to sell there, so you need to check the rules on that. But the benefit of these were lots of people are selling them. I was buying them in bulk. You know, they wanted the money, and that gives you a lot more power.
Yeah, and you're supporting the local culture, which is always, as a tourist, makes you feel better, that you're actually contributing to the local people.
Yeah, there's a big factor of that as well, but at the same time, you also need to be a bit of a conscious buyer and making sure that you're not actually supporting bad industries which abuse young kids making these products and stuff like that. But these items, at the end of the episode, I'll go into a tiny bit more detail why the three different sets of items were very different scenarios in the purchase world on holiday. This is why it all sort of rolls into the tactics of purchasing, because I think one of the things which I remember I've taught you a bit more about when we've been travelling, whenever we approach a shop, there are so many different ways to go about it. You could casually go past and make them try and draw you in.
Yeah.
If you slightly window shop and you've ever had a guy trying to come out and really draw you in, generally means, one, they're a really good salesman and they're just absolutely crying to get you in.
Yeah.
2, they really need your money, which then instantly gives you more power the second you step in the shop. But give them a bit of a pushback first. Then go in the shop if you know there's something in there you want, and then you can be a bit more aggressive.
Yeah. One of my favourite points is when you're walking around different market stalls and you see, or one of my favourite lines is when you see the same item in multiple different stores. I like making sure that the seller has seen me looking at similar items on a different stall, and then when it actually comes to negotiating, essentially going, you know what, because you're my favourite, and then giving an offer at that point, because then you're complimenting him and sort of putting him at ease and making it feel like you're building a relationship and make it feel like you actually have a friendship there.
Yeah.
In the hope that maybe he'll give you a better price.
Yeah. I think I'd say if I was going to give our viewers and listeners at this point in time one of my number one top tips and one of our best kept secrets for haggling is, if you're going to a market, which is very common when you're traveling, walk around the whole market and eye up. Let's say we're going to food market in Barcelona and Morgan really wants strawberries, which is a common occurrence.
Oh, that's nice.
The best thing to do is to walk around and try and see how many stands you see with strawberries, because what they'll do is, one, give you a rough estimate of the price and see if there's a differentiation in price, but also quality and volume of product.
Yeah.
Because you might find one stand selling, a tiny punnet for €3 and the next one along selling a massive one for $2.50, and they're nicer and look better, blah, blah, blah. And then at least you haven't regretted that further on the line. That also gives you a lot more power.
Yeah.
Because if I see two stalls in the same marketplace and I know I'm going to haggle, because I'm happy to haggle at that spot, then I can get an offer off the first one, say, oh yeah, I'm going to come back to you in a bit. They know in their head, oh, chances are they're not going to come back to you. Then you go to the next market stall, see if they give you a price, compete with them. If they've given you a low price, and go back to your original one and say, hey, they've given me this price, but I'd really like to buy off you. And you can actually get market stalls competing. I think we've even seen it when we were a lot younger and we were in France. There were 3 stands trying to sell the same really cheap watch, and it got to a point where the guy just gave the guy in our year the watch for free, just out of wanting to beat the other 2 guys on the market stand. Yes, morally that's not really the great thing to do, but it was super interesting to see it happen, that they were that competitive about just trying to win the deal, because it got to the point they were like, oh, €1 and I'll sell it to you. And he just gave it to him free just to win the whole argument. That's a whole different side of haggling, and that's very much the sellers just wanting to beat each other.